Today is Saturday the 10th of August 2024 and in this video I'm going to reflect a little bit about the coroner's conclusions to the inquest into the death of Maeve Boothby-O'Neill the session yesterday afternoon, which started at 2, went on 3 hours without pause, without break, and the coroner, who clearly has some kind of cold, was reading her report for 3 hours solidly. The coroner ultimately found that Maeve Boothby-O'Neill died at home on the 3rd of October 2021 from natural causes. Specifically malnourishment, which arises from severe ME, right? And that's it. That's it. That's the conclusion of the 2 weeks. And I'm just left with that going, well, on the one hand, of course, that's the finding, right? We don't know what ME is, we don't know what the cause is, there is no detailed or specific treatment protocol, therefore doctors are making it up. The doctors who cared for her were making it up, doing the best they could without sufficient sufficient or sufficiently detailed guidelines, right? Now, I think there are issues within that. So I think that there is information and there is research out there on ME CFS. There is. And certain things are fairly well agreed and established. Perhaps not to the extent that some of these doctors wanted, as in, blind randomized trials, involving tons of people, right? Maybe that kind of evidence is not there. But actually, there has been a substantial weight of research into ME CFS, because I've engaged with quite a lot of it. And I'm not a doctor, and I find it really hard to understand a lot of this stuff, but I do know it's there. And I think what I have found very difficult is that loads of these doctors along the way kind of went, yeah, so we followed NICE guidelines, which are, and actually in the case of Dr. Prague, I don't even really understand the NICE guidelines. She didn't say it in so many words, but when she was asked about how she understood the energy envelope in relation to metabolism in a severe ME patient, she couldn't answer it. So they're following guidelines without understanding the implications of those guidelines even, right? Because there is no training, or no, I gather that there is an E module, right? Training module for trainee doctors, for med students, but that it has a really low uptake. So actually most doctors don't know anything and haven't got an interest in knowing anything. And also something that I got from a really good Guardian article today on this is that ME CFS used to be conceived of as a psychological behavioural condition, not a physiological one. And those people who had that kind of training on it are now in charge. They're now in charge and making the rules. And they're highly influential. So actually, if you've got those at the top who don't believe in it, who are failing to engage with it as a real condition, it's a cascade, isn't it, downwards. I've lost my train of thought. I can't remember where I started here. I think I just struggle with the fact that we have this very black and white finding, which is natural cause of death. And I don't think the coroner couldn't have concluded anything else, because we don't know what the cause is and there isn't a treatment protocol. So doctors were flying blind. I think where my issue is that there is research out there, and with somebody who is so severe as Maeve, it's just the fact that I didn't hear a single doctor go the extra mile, apart from Dr. Lucy Shenton, her GP, go the extra mile and attempt to do any kind of research. But then let's remember what the context was at the time. 2021, we were still living through COVID. So actually, and we already know that in the NHS, doctors, a lot of them and nurses are under extreme pressure, and I think they work 12.5-hour shifts, and day after day after day. And I don't know about the rest of you, and I know I have ME, CFS, but when you're tired and working under pressure like that, you don't have capacity yourself to really interrogate a condition, ME, CFS, right? So on the one hand, I'm kind of going, yeah, nobody, it seems like no doctor actually went the extra mile to try to find out about ME, CFS from the quite substantial literature of research and writings about it. But equally, they're working in conditions under COVID where they probably didn't have capacity. I think my issue, the reason I was getting quite upset at certain points during the coroner's conclusion, is that, for example, she read through quite meticulously, the coroner, the evidence of Dr. Prague, which I found quite interesting because she kind of glossed Dr. Strain. He popped up quite a lot, but just in little pocket-sized bits, right? We got Dr. Prague's summary in quite minute detail. But there wasn't a single flicker of critique. Whereas my experience of listening to Dr. Prague's evidence, well, I found it upsetting, really upsetting, because I really didn't buy, for example, her justification for using the term manipulative in relation to Maeve in her notes twice. I didn't buy that at all. In the context of other things she was saying to Maeve, like, come on, you've got to help us to help you. And her complete kind of, it seemed to me, disbelief over the claim that Maeve had lost her suck when Maeve's mum, Sarah Boothby, indicated as much. And for her, actually, it seemed quite striking that loss of suck coincided with an upsetting phone call from the dad. So there were quite a lot of implicit clues indicating a lack of belief with regards to Maeve, that the coroner completely failed to note. And I found that quite troubling. And again, I'm either left going, well, how far does the coroner believe this? And/or perhaps this is just not the kind of forum for that kind of critique, and maybe I was expecting too much and hoping for too much from this conclusion. The coroner is going to be formulating a set of recommendations arising, out of Maeve's case. So maybe that's where some kind of slightly more critical engagement with Maeve's care will manifest. I don't know, but I was just really, really disappointed. And again, I talked earlier about how I think and feel quite quite a lot of conflicting things. So the coroner spoke, referenced the fact that there'd been a lot of debate and disagreement over when and how Maeve was eating, what she was eating, how much she was eating, and also when she lost her sock. And it was really, and I understand the coroner's, reflections here. It was really hard to pinpoint those details because they were conflicting. And one, I was left with questions, which included, okay, so Sarah Boothby, who's actually the one feeding Maeve all the time, surely is more trustworthy when she says that Maeve's only consuming 700 or 800 calories a day, but the hospital, the nurse records are showing, 15, 16, 1700 calories a day. And in fact, the coroner did indicate that it seems more likely that Sarah Boothby would be the more accurate kind of witness here. So that was just going into more detail with relation to some of what was quite difficult. I remember, hearing that she'd stopped being able to eat, and then she's in hospital and the notes say that she had jacket potato and puddings. So there was, again, I can see how doctors and nurses and the coroner might end up feeling some skepticism, some doubt over how real this was, right? Is Maeve being manipulative, to use Dr. Prague's language? But again, what everyone that I heard in this inquest failed to note is that, as Maeve and her mum would, agreed, ME is like the weather, the British weather. 1 minute it's sunshine, the next minute it's hail. And then back again. You can move through several seasons in a day. If you have ME, doesn't matter if you're mild or if you're severe, it's just with the severity that what you lose is far more significant, right? But things are not predictable. So you can, with ME, 1 minute be feeling absolutely normal. So if you're the mild to moderate end of ME, like me, you can 1 minute feel absolutely normal, right? I can be making this video right now feeling absolutely normal. 3 hours from now, because I made this video, I might be needing to lie down and not be able to move for several hours. That's how it works. But once I've rested enough, I can be up and about again. So as I reflect on the kind of the toing and froing of, can Maeve suck? Can she consume real food? And no, she can't. Yes, she can. And this toing and froing that seemed to prompt all this skepticism. Well, actually, it is likely that she moved through this yo-yoing of yes she can, no she can't, yes she can, no she can't. Also, when she's in a hospital and she is being very much encouraged to have whole food, right? One is able, when one has ME, to go the extra mile, to please people, or because you're feeling some kind of pressure to do so. And we can do that. It just comes at a cost. It comes with crashes and relapses. So and it's just nowhere in the inquest, nowhere that I heard in the inquest, including the coroner's conclusion, was there any acknowledgement of that. It was like just a total lack of understanding of that. And And all of this kind of indeterminacy, right, was couched by the doctors and in the coroner's conclusion as, reasons to doubt Maeve and her mum. And I also found it very hard to listen to the coroner talk about how, well, actually, it was ultimately, Maeve and her mum made the decision that she goes home on admission 2 and 3 to hospital. The first one, she had no choice. It was her choice to go home. And she did have mental capacity. And all of that is true. It's absolutely true. They did make that decision. But they made that decision because Maeve wasn't, in their view, being helped in hospital. She wasn't improving. And I can only imagine what a stressful environment it is for her. I have mild to moderate ME, and there are times when I cannot tolerate sound, any sound, and if any sound. And even when I'm doing well, I can't tolerate competing sounds. It's really stressful. It's really, really difficult to cope with. Now, when you're at Maeve's end of very severe ME, any sound above a whisper, and even then that's too much. It's almost like everybody involved, including the coroner, just their imaginations failed them completely. So when the coroner was saying, well, it was Maeve and her mum's decision for her to go home, yes, that is true, but it's only true in the context of hospital was like a kind of hell for Maeve. So how far is that a free choice? How far is that a choice at all? And again, I think I was really disappointed with the coroner's failure to even nod towards understanding that. I felt let down by her. I missed the day when I think they questioned witnesses from Devon County Council, right? So I missed that during the inquest. But what I gathered during the coroner's conclusions yesterday, was that they were still investigating, what's it called? It's called, they were still investigating Sarah Boothby for factitious disorder until the 21st of September. Bearing in mind, my understanding is Maeve didn't eat anything from I think it was the 21st of August. And they were, Devon County Council, still putting their energies, their limited capacities, into investigating Sarah Boothby for factitious disorder. And I was really disappointed here to hear the coroner say that although this was extremely unfortunate, she found it reasonable because it was just their way of a sort of ensuring that, every possible help for Maeve. Well, that might be true if Devon County Council has endless capacity to both investigate Sarah Boothby and support Sarah Boothby with her care of Maeve. But what I heard when the community nursing matron was interviewed during the inquest was that Sarah Boothby was crying out for help and she wasn't getting it. She wasn't getting it. So actually, maybe, I don't know, this might be really unfair of me, but I'm left going, okay, we all know that councils have, finite resources and insufficient resources. And if they're expending their resources in investigating Sarah Boothby right up to the 21st September, about 2 weeks before Maeve actually died, couldn't they have used their resources in other ways? I don't know. I mean, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and maybe I'm being really, really unfair there. But again, I found the coroner's gloss of it was extremely unfortunate but reasonable, actually, fair enough. I just found that insufficiently nuanced as a response to that. And insufficiently attentive to the parents, to Sarah Boothby, whose pain through this I can scarcely comprehend. I think possibly this is the last thing that I'm going to speak to in relation to the conclusions yesterday. And this is something that I never fully understood, and that this inquest never got to the bottom of, which is the contradictory information that was coming about Maeve's, when she improved and when she declined. So all the doctors indicated that Maeve improved while in hospital and declined when she went home. Sarah Boothby, meanwhile, repeatedly said that Maeve improved when at home and declined in hospital. I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I tend to think that Maeve was probably happier at home, and in that sense improved at the level of perhaps her mental health and, and emotionally, where she could, we all know what it's like to be at home. We all know how stressful being in hospital can be. And just imagine if you're in hospital with severe ME, what a nightmare place it must be. Ultimately, it probably didn't matter, did it, where she was? There is no protocol. When they were talking about whether or not tube feeding, a variety of sorts of tube feeding should have happened sooner. They were all just talking about it in terms of just keeping Maeve alive long enough that perhaps to give time for a cure to be found. But nobody was talking in terms of, a recovery beyond that. And I think there were a lot of doctors involved who really did care, and perhaps they all cared. It's just that, in my view, there were signs that people involved in her care didn't really believe, and they were in fact investigating Sarah Boothby for Munchausen by proxy, and ultimately, if we want to interrogate the definition of care and what good care is, we all know that it includes feeling understood and believed. So while all those involved in Maeve's care in those final months might be said to have done everything they could at the physical treatment level, I think, whatever the coroner says, from my own impressions of watching this inquest, I think there was substantial evidence of scepticism around Maeve and her mum that was uncaring, that was at times borderline abusive, and that by no means extends to all the medical professionals who were involved in Maeve's care. I noted myself how impressed I was by Dr. Patel's evidence, and the coroner also remarked upon him and also commended Dr. Roy, whose evidence I didn't hear, as being particularly, as kind of both of them commendable in their care of Maeve. And I have to say, I agree in relation to Dr. Patel. But apart from them, I think Dr. Strain was the lead at the hospital for COVID during our COVID crisis. And he was only, half-time in terms of, his hospital work. So his capacity was limited. And I think Dr. Lucy Shenton demonstrated, although she wasn't a witness because she's suffering post-traumatic stress from this case. So she's off work because of how traumatic Maeve's case was. But she also, we heard again and again just how hard, how brilliant that doctor was. And Maeve, in her final weeks or months, actually, sent a message to Dr. Shenton thanking her for believing her. And so I think this is my sort of finishing note, is do not underestimate coroner or medical professionals, the power of believing your ME CFS patients. We all know you don't have a clear treatment protocol. We know that. But when the medical tests come back normal, do not thereby assume that your patient is just, it's not really real. Because if it were the medical tests, the blood and urine tests and the rest of it would come back with abnormalities. Please, we know, everyone knows that ME sufferers, their medical tests come back normal. We know this. So if they've come back normal, it doesn't mean that that person is lying. So please do them the courtesy of trusting and believing them. And also, if you're a doctor listening to this and you're looking after an ME patient, there's a good chance that patient has done more research into this than you have. And although they're not a medical doctor, they might know more than you. And so trust from their end of you might start to break down if you don't even understand the basics of how it feels to have this. So if you don't have time or energy to do a superficial research yourself, listen to your ME patient and believe them. And meanwhile, we're all of us, there are a lot of people out there struggling with ME. We're all crossing our fingers and begging the government and other funding bodies to invest in research into this. And then that research can support our doctors in treating their patients and believing them. Thank you for listening. I'm going to try and attend the coroner's recommendations, which I think from memory is towards the end of September. So I might do another video at that point. But for now, very best to you if you have ME. If you're a doctor, please believe your ME sufferers. And if you knew Maeve or you know her parents, There are a lot of us who attended this inquest who feel very deeply for you, for Maeve and her family. This experience, I cannot imagine how dehumanizing, how inhumane this whole experience must have been for them, how uncaring and insufficient this whole process must have been for them as falling under medical and social care. Yeah, my heart's with them. Thanks for watching.